Hello and welcome to the Design Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whyte, and in this podcast series we explore the career journeys of design and engineering leaders from the world of physical product development. In today's episode, I'm joined by Oliver Murphy, founder of SLOWE Living, a brand that embraces sustainable, minimalist furniture design. Oliver's path from industrial design at Loughborough University to freelancing in branding and ultimately founding his own company is inspiring. We'll discuss the influence of Japanese and Scandinavian aesthetics, the leap from freelance work to building a brand, and how SLOWE Living's ethos of purposeful, crafted design took shape during the pandemic. If you're interested in learning how creative vision and sustainable values can drive a successful business, stay tuned because this conversation is for you. Oliver, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here.
Good to have you. So, Oliver Murphy, you are the designer and founder at SLOWE Living, a fledgling furniture business. You've got a fantastic career in freelance design and consultancy before that, and started your kind of design journey, I suppose, at Loughborough Uni. So rather than me ramble through and cherry pick out kind of bits from your LinkedIn profile, why don't we kind of, if you can introduce yourself and maybe then we'll go back to where it all started.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ollie or Oliver Murphy. I currently am I'm a founder of a furniture design business called SLOWE Living. That sort of started in the pandemic by accident, really. Without chopping around and sort of cutting backwards and forwards through time. I studied industrial design at Loughborough, like you said. And my career sort of moved away from graphic design, from industrial design into graphic design, and then has sort of come back to product or industrial design, more specifically furniture design, since. So, in the top level kind of look at it, it's kind of flipped on its head a bit. So, yeah, I did A-level DT, absolutely loved that at school, and remember being connected to kind of design and just thinking, this is really cool. Like, you get to look at buildings and draw stuff and make things in the workshop. And I just thought, my school is quite good at sort of pushing design as a significant thing. I think probably beyond that, it was like not every school was, or even, design as a subject wasn't always kind of, it was a bit poo-pooed sometimes and not serious. And gratefully, that's definitely not the case anymore. But
which school did you go to?
It's called Bradfield College in Reading.
Cool.
And they're just very encouraging around leaning into design. So then I got a place at Loughborough. Originally, I was just looking at all different universities, and Loughborough seemed to be sort of just this one that had a real kind of product industrial design focus, which at first I was a little bit intimidated by, because, there was just a lot of different categories to learn within that, everything from CAD to being in the workshop and learning on milling machines to sketching properly. It was just a real kind of like roller coaster of learning in 4 years, and I had a placement within that period down in London. And I've never worked so hard in my life. Well, maybe more recently now on the brand, but it was a really intense learning curve. But actually gave me, and I'm sure other people listening that did go to Loughborough would attest to that. It kind of really gives you a solid foundation. And at the time, you're like, oh my god, this is terrifying and intimidating, and like, am I going to get through this? And but you come out the other end, and you think, oh, I've really got some great skills off the back of that, which I've used both in kind of running a business and also, obviously designing products, and not just products, but brands and graphic design for clients like post uni. So yeah, I think that was definitely the making of like my design journey, as it were.
Yeah.
And gave me the confidence to kind of go, do you know what, actually I've got some good skills here, I can use these. But so the placement year, I worked with a lovely little company down in the Oxo Tower. Like, this is my third year at uni. They were called Whitbread and Wilkinson, and they sort of, they called it applied art, which is like, so they take licenses from people like the National Gallery, Eames office in California, Pantone, Disney. And that was a real kind of fun year, which was very different to Loughborough in the sense that was very sort of technical and CAD based and sort of surface modeling and all that. Whereas it was that year particularly was very graphic led and actually a little bit close to where my interests were, which was in kind of, I suppose, design history and like culture and product. So they would apply the licenses of the design onto sort of white labeled goods or their own design goods. And part of that, my most memorable experience from that was designing something for Disney, which was they had this sort of archive set of artworks from a ride from the theme parks called It's a Small World, which I'm sure everyone will know and the theme will come into their head. But we got to sort of apply that to a kind of what we called like a stacking children's meal set. So there'd be a cup like upside down for the body, and then on top of that sat the bowl, which was the head, and then on top of the bowl there was a plate. And you can Google it and it'll come up. But we had great fun designing that, and there was a different character for like 8 countries of the world, and that was just a really fun project to kind of just own and be part of, and just again gave me confidence in a kind of real life setting of designing something. Then again, very simple product design, but it's kind of where I found, I think, my confidence zone or my kind of place, which is this sort of simple less is more kind of approach. And I was always been inspired by these periods of design like Bauhaus and the Eames,
yeah,
and just anything from the 20th century really, right up into kind of the 80s and the Conran era and stuff like that. So I was kind of always, that was my kind of design language, quote unquote. I sometimes found that hard to bring into the course at Loughborough, but I think that placement really helped me kind of express that and get a kind of bit more confidence in like, oh, I'm this kind of designer, as opposed to like designing vacuum cleaners or hoovers or anything like that.
It's so difficult, isn't it, when you're kind of 17, 18, kind of thinking about life and where it's going, because no one really knows at that stage. And no, I don't know if it's the same with Loughborough then as it is now, but you go to the degree shows and there's so many different variations on the courses. I imagine the choices were a little bit more limited when you were picking, but where do you start? Like, as you know, you've kind of gone into this industrial design and product design, but it's only when you're kind of 3/4 of the way through the course that you've recognized that actually I want to focus in that kind of that niche or that area of design.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think looking back when I was in that period, I would have thought, oh my God, there's, I have to do what the course is telling me to do. And that's what design is. What I'd say to my younger self or someone in it now would be like, keep pushing to kind of try and bring your voice in. If you like something and you're into that design, try and bring that into what, the course is teaching you. Because I think the same goes for anything in life. It's like the more you can just put your own flavor and be creative and be your own person within your lane, within that category or that field. It might seem like you're going against or the status quo of what the course or the university is trying to mold you in, and that's for good reason, because they're trying to create the best design out of you in that 3-4 year period. But it doesn't mean that you, just because you're not great at CAD or you're not great at conceptualizing, everyone's got a weakness somewhere. It doesn't mean that you can't bring in your own kind of influences and flavor, and just being open to kind of and curious around like design or whatever inspires you and trying to bring that into your work. I think, and that's the thing. I mean, if I look at CVs now, not that I do massively, but when I'm looking for a bit of design support or somebody to help me on a project, whether it's graphic design or with SLOWE Living on the furniture side, I'm immediately just drawn to things where you're like, that person's injected their own personality into this. I can get who they are, so I think, I would just encourage my younger self to kind of just trust that process a bit more and just like, just because it wasn't. Can you give an example? Yeah.
Can you give an example of where, on the CV or portfolio in particular, something's really grabbed your attention recently?
Well, actually, I've been looking for some part-time support on. So I have a part-time assistant, Amanda, who, shout out to Amanda, she's amazing. and she's on graphic design stuff. And then I've been looking for more kind of support on the sales side a little bit. I'll take sort of Amanda's CV, for example. It was just out of, I don't know how many I received, probably 100 applications or something, probably more. It's quite hard to skim through lots of different things, and just immediately she'd put effort into the design. Admittedly, I don't always read what's on the CV. I just get an immediate feeling just to filter things down, and I can tell that there was a bit of character there. And then I tried to jump on a call, and you just get a connection. And that's when I kind of go, okay, what's this person really about? What is their skill set, and where are the gaps, and what are the strengths, and whatever. So I don't know if that's a conventional way of doing it, but that's the way I've certainly found getting kind of through to stuff, is just to like get a sense of the person and what's on there, and then and sort of maybe work backwards a little bit into.
Yeah, massively. I think especially when you're a small business and you're going to be working very closely with this person, it's first and foremost is, do you click? Can you see yourself working together? And I think as human beings, we tend to get a good sense of that very quickly within a conversation, whether it's flowing nicely and there's rapport building. And then you can go through and actually tick off whether or not this person can do a job for you. And then it's assessing kind of if there are gaps, what's trainable and what's not. But if the human connection's not there and the attitude isn't there, it makes everything else a lot harder.
100%, yeah.
It's not always that practical, and say it's a very technical role, maybe you want to be screening harder on some of the technical keywords. For instance, if you've got 100 applicants, you need to whittle it down, and then flick it back to the personality kind of when you're assessing those candidates. But
at such a small scale for me, it's like, I think a lot of it can be, it's not incredibly technical stuff that I'm looking for. It's just like someone that really kind of buys into the concept and the brand that I'm trying to get out into the world, and someone that kind of wants to, grow their portfolio with like nice work and that embellishes what I'm doing, but also really takes their portfolio into a direction that they want to go as well. So I think,
massively, yeah. So you go back to university, your final year, having had this epiphany that it's really graphics you're interested in, and not necessarily physical product. But what was the first kind of job you had after university? Then where did you end up?
So I went back to Whitbread Wilkinson for another year, and long story short, was made redundant from that. And then I joined another company in the Oxo Tower called Black and Bloom, with the founder Dan Black, and had a real opportunity there to kind of pivot into sort of this thing called branding that I was like, oh, I like this. I can kind of do it. I feel a little less kind of responsibility is the wrong word, but with product design, that if something goes wrong, there's quite a lot of pressure attached to that. Like if tooling goes wrong or the design doesn't work, and it's a much longer drawn out process. And simultaneously to this, I was kind of looking at how I could potentially create a skill set that I could go freelance with and start my own business. And I was just drawn to branding. I was just good at it, and or better at it than product, should I say. And Dan, I think, saw that I'd left Whitbread Wilkinson. It's like, we've got these 4 brands that we want to kind of elevate and communicate better, and brought me in to sort of build websites, create brand identity, art direction around these 4 different subcategory brands that Black and Bloom was developing. So that really helped me build a portfolio and get a lot closer to a good friend called Rich Donaldson, who I worked with there, who was lead product designer, and just, I guess we got on really well, and just seeing how he approached work and design and manufacturing, and he was developing his own range within there, which I was branding. So it was a really nice collaboration of like working directly with the lead designer and the founder and a small business, and thinking, I like this scale of business, where there's freedom and there's flexibility and there's autonomy, and you're trusted to do stuff. And that was like, I'm happy at this level, and I've never really been drawn into corporate stuff, although following that, when I started branding, I did go into agencies and stuff, and it wasn't for me. But I think where people are creating things and product, and it's just, all the while, I think at that early stage of your career, you're just figuring out, who am I? What am I into? What is it okay to like? Why should I be liking this? Because the industry's going that way. And, and I just think, no, you just trust your gut and go into the area you really like. And if that's not necessarily the one that's got all the awards or it's got, the massive turnover and the revenue, but if you're looked after and you're doing good stuff every day, and then I think, to me, that's a bit more of a success signal than, all the sort of accolades and awards that the industries can be a bit too focused on, in my opinion. But I think
it's all subjective, and awards and achievements, accolades, it's all personal to the individual, isn't it? So you just got to find joy in whatever you're doing. Can I just say, I'm going to attempt something. This is the first time I've tried this on the podcast, but I've got your LinkedIn profile on the side screen, kind of while we're chatting, and I've found you've got a great example on your LinkedIn profile that I'm going to try and share my screen and hopefully create a nice little snippet for people. But so this could go terribly wrong, but I'm going to click this.
Give it a go.
And there we go. Right, I don't know if it's going to come up on your screen.
Yeah, I can see that.
But cool. Right, this is real time action. So your profile, you were talking about the work you were doing at W2 at Whitbread Wilkinson, and I've just seen that you've embedded the pictures onto your profile. So these are really cool. Really like this.
That's it. Yeah, that's the Disney meal sets.
That's great fun. So for context, anyone watching this, you can see kind of some of the work, but also it's a great use of a LinkedIn profile. Like if you're thinking about kind of your career as an individual, whether it's graphic design or product design, you've got the ability here to embed images and websites and stuff within the body of your experience there. Definitely, if you're thinking about your next step and you've got some work you can show off, if it's in the public domain, like this is clearly a marketing photo, isn't it? So that's good to go as long as you put the context of what you worked on. It's like with the CV that you mentioned. It's the little things like that make it stand out. If you've got recruiters like me or
visual fields, so I think it's. As designers, well, I don't speak for myself, but like we're just drawn to things visual, and then you're like, okay, what's that? And then you look into kind of how that came about or what involvement they had.
Absolutely, yeah, it's great. So, hopefully that's useful for people. But I just want to dig into something then. So you mentioned that obviously you moved on from Whitbread and Wilkinson, you joined Black and Blum, but you had one eye on kind of how do I build up a portfolio that I might then use as freelance. So even at that early stage in your career, you were thinking about self-employment and going it alone.
Yeah.
Where did that kind of come from?
It's a good question, and I don't really know, but I think I had a lot of besides work, I had a lot of other things that I wanted to sort of fulfill in my life or early career around that time, and part of that was to live in these areas countries that were really inspired to me from design and still are. The first one being Japan, and I knew that it would be quite difficult to get a job out there. So why not create a job where I can work remotely and travel and sort of base myself there? And that's what I did.
Awesome.
Sort of in my late 20s. I guess the reason for that in Japan, not alone in the design world to just. The significance it has as a country and its culture and design on an influence that I have, and I think that probably reared its head at a younger age from things like Nintendo and Pokemon and all these just kind of things that were just very visual and fun and design orientated, and that later led on to kind of architecture, clothing, manufacturing, technology. Anime, just absolute mecca for visual art and design. And I thought, I've got to get this, isn't it? Why is the output of just cool stuff just so high and such a good quality? And also the philosophy around Japan and its history and its approach to work and processes and just the outlook and philosophies in life really just also really interesting at the same time. So it's like, I've got to get out there. And that was almost kind of, I treated that as a bit of a career step. It's like as a promotion in a way. Like, I think if I can get that experience, I don't know now, but I'll know that in the future it will benefit me tenfold because I've made that leap and I've done that. And I can sort of start to see how now. So I went the first time, which was a bit more of a kind of a bit aimless in the sense of I went out there and had my laptop and I was working for clients remotely from UK and had a client in Australia at the time, doing graphic design and sort of, websites, branding. And then I was sort of just kind of traveling around and doing that. And there was a loose idea to kind of get connections and build a network there. I think I was just too much enjoying the process, just traveling around Japan at that stage. And as I was due to fly home, I had a really, like, a friend of mine who I met and we were still really good friends, Yusan. He put me in touch with another guy called Atsushi-san, who worked for a company called Bay Cruise, which were a massive, it's quite hard to kind of compare them to a business like them in the UK, but essentially a big corporation, which, if you go retail corporation for food and fashion and interiors, and their job or at Sushi-san's job was to come to the UK, Paris, New York, or just travel the world to find cool retail concepts. He was in fashion, but had moved to food and hospitality, and to bring those concepts to Japan, and Bay Cruise would sort of set them up into retail spots around Tokyo and Japan. So he liked my portfolio and he was keen to chat, and he used to live in London, and so we got on really well. And at that point I had my flight booked home. I was like, Christ, I should be out here trying to kind of develop this. Anyway, so I went home to UK and I spent the next year just thinking, I need to be back out there trying to grow this thing. Like this, I don't know what it is, but I just feel good about this and want to kind of lean into it. It just felt kind of like something I had to do. And then so I went back out and I was there for about 8 months or something in total, and built up a sort of network around that area. Long story short, it was time to come home, and I realised you've got to commit a lot of time there to really make that work. But fast forward now to SLOWE Living, which I guess we'll talk about in a bit. It's coming back into it's becoming useful again, and that network is kind of, I can re-tap into that, and it's becoming a kind of talking point around my approach, what I'm inspired by. It kind of helps the brand story. And it's just my story as opposed to kind of something, that was created in a sort of strategy meeting or anything like that. Yeah. So I wanted to just tell like my inspiration of Japan and that period, and what a bit of a dream for the brand would to have a pop up or a kind of some exposure and presence in Tokyo in Japan. So working on that, but that's a long goal.
Did you, so before you went out to Japan, did you know anyone out there, or was it just go and find your way?
No, I booked a flight. I did go with a friend, Ben, and he was a chef. I've known him for a long time since school, and we bonded a lot over all the things I mentioned before. And him in particular, from his chef background, really wanted to go there and kind of get under the skin of Japanese cooking and just, see the processes of knife making, and we're both interested in the history of the place. And yeah, it was just an amazing experience. That, definitely left a bit of myself there and brought a bit of Japan back, if that's the cliche, but it's true. And then, so simultaneously to all of this, I'm working for a mixture of agencies, private clients, small and large, anything from law firms to freight forwarding. It was a very, very generalist mix, which at the time, I was very happy with, because, it was kind of, supporting a living to travel and to do the things I wanted to do, but it wasn't necessarily, they were slightly disconnected. I was like, what I was doing or what I was trying to do and achieve with these kind of trips wasn't really connected to the work I was doing, and that was sort of before COVID was becoming a bit jarring in the sense like I'm not in the direction that I want to go. So I knew that I wanted to bring them closer together, i.e. the work that I was doing was connected with the kind of things that I was trying to push outside of work more with Japan, work more with kind of furniture and product design. And that shift took quite a long time post-COVID to really kind of make the transition. It wasn't just like ripping a plaster off and going, oh, I'm a furniture maker now or whatever. It took a bit of, mental understanding and confidence to go, is this the right move? Had quite a, good run at freelance, but COVID and a couple of things changed that. But yeah, I'll come on to that, I guess, in a second. But I think...
Yeah. It sounds like earlier on in your career, you're quite adventurous, willing to take a risk and a gamble, see where things go. And I think that's a great attitude to have. And the networking element of that, I mean, clearly going out to a foreign country on kind of almost on your own, obviously with a friend, but you're both doing different careers. So you've got to make your own kind of networks there and find business. Yeah. That's so character building, I think. And and I imagine you're still benefiting from some of the connections you've made kind of while you're out 100%.
there. Yeah. I think it was a bit of a gamble, and I think people got why I was going, but then there was a kind of like, oh, what's this for? Like, but I knew I had to do it, and I knew that it was something I wanted to kind of, I knew that the benefit wouldn't be immediate, and that to kind of create connections there now, I can go to Japan and I've got a friend to stay with, and I've got people there if friends go, I can put them in touch with people, and that in itself is, I just love having a kind of connection to this culture. And it massively inspired the work that I did and made it kind of all worthwhile and just interesting.
Yeah.
And then I kind of did Tokyo, and then just before the pandemic happened, I was living in Copenhagen for a year, which another kind of place specifically for furniture and interior and architecture was somewhere that I was like always drawn to as well. So it's like, okay, so done Tokyo, like I really want to see what Copenhagen's like. And I did the same thing. I kind of found I had a breakup, and I thought, okay, well, now or never. Obviously didn't see the pandemic coming down the road, but I got a good year out of it.
Yeah.
I just went onto Facebook Marketplace, looked for spare rooms, found a guy, and then he's like, yeah, we've got a space, nice looking apartment, whatever. And that looked fine. We had a call on the phone, and then I think the week later I was there, and I stayed there for a year.
So your kind of sense for adventure hadn't really waned up until that point. And I guess, going through a breakup, I did a similar thing when I broke up with my fiance years ago, and then it's like you don't know what to do with yourself. So I ended up going to and visiting my friend in Thailand for a week, like last minute. Never flown anywhere outside of Europe before.
Liberating to just kind of just to do something like that and go and
just going to have an adventure and just kind of just forget about life and stuff. Have something completely different. But fast forward then, obviously COVID hit, and you touched on something earlier. Obviously, we'll talk about SLOWE Living as part of this, but I get the sense that sense of adventure or risk taking may have been dampened slightly, or kind of by the pandemic. Do you recognise did anything change really in terms of that? Did it take you longer to think about kind of jumping into something very different with SLOWE Living, or?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think the answer is yes. I think the pandemic changed a lot for a lot of people. From my perspective, I think it was weird because I kind of before the pandemic, I had a kind of bit of a stressful year, even if there was in Copenhagen. The work that I was doing, I just wasn't connecting to, and it's like I kind of want to be working more in the industries that I'm interested in and connected to, and kind of really can pour my love into it and show up to that work better. And as a freelancer, you sometimes have to but it's part and parcel of taking work. isn't always speaks to you, but, pays the bills, and that's completely part of it. And but there's just part of me that's like, I kind of want to do what I'm doing and move that into kind of industries that I was into. But at the same time, it's like, I could really do with a little bit of just a pause. And then the pandemic happened, and it was a big pause, which I lost a lot of clients, a lot of work, a lot of businesses I was working for kind of either no longer exist or just had to really cut back. And so that was a bit of a shock, and had to adapt. But what it did mean is I had a lot of time on my hands, and I kind of thought, I'm just going to pause this sort of brand thing for a minute. I had a couple of projects that, I wasn't enjoying. What's the next step? Like I was 30 at this point, and remember in Copenhagen walking around the design museum, furniture design museum, and they had this small exhibition on which was like all different furniture makers that designed a chair or something. I just thought, God, that would be cool to just have a product that was like, not necessarily in a design museum, but just to have realized a product that you've made and someone's kind of gone, oh, I like that, or I want to buy it, or I'm into that sort of thing. And I thought, I'd like to get back to this product design thing a bit more, and realize actually the move to graphic design and branding served a purpose for that period of my life post uni and, travel and all that. But, where I was at that time, I was thinking, I want to work with my hands again. And when I lost these clients, I reached out to a really good friend of mine, and very, very talented furniture designer, Edward Collinson, which I did his website for, and a beautiful furniture. And I kind of just said, look, I've got some spare time on my hands. His workshop was in Tottenham. Can I come and just refresh my design workshop skills, put me on anything, sanding, I don't care. I just want to be in a workshop. I want to be kind of working with my hands again. So I was going there sort of a couple of days a week. So at this point I was back at my parents because, the pandemic happened, and it just so happened that, I was back in the UK and it was locked down, and didn't end up going back to Copenhagen.
Are you frustrated by drawn-out recruitment processes, missing out on talent to your competition, or wasting time interviewing candidates who don't quite live up to their profile? If you're the founder or leader of a physical technology brand or design consultancy, here's what we can do for you. By working closely with you and your team, Kodu will help you improve your entire existence of hiring. We'll make it easier to identify, attract, and ultimately hire the very best design and engineering talent ahead of or from your competition. You'll only interview candidates who fit the brief, and we'll work with you to ensure you get the outcome you want in a timely manner, which is typically within 6 weeks or less. We have a 100% fill rate, and we guarantee to get you a positive outcome. If we don't deliver, you don't pay. But how can I make such a claim? Well, the short answer is I've been doing this for a very long time now. Our process at Kodu is built from over a decade of my own personal experience recruiting within physical product design and development. I've hired hundreds of designers, engineers, managers and leaders in that time, over 97% of whom are still in post after 12 months. On top of that, I've personally built an incredible network of thousands of professionals in the physical product design and engineering space, covering the UK, US and Europe. And I've taken what I've learned over the years and put the best of that into Kodu. So if you'd like to spend less time stuck in a recruitment loop and more time doing what you love, get in touch. Email chris@teamkodu.com or message me on LinkedIn. But for now, let's get back to the show.
And then working with Ed, and I was thinking, I'm really into this. I like this. I kind of want to somehow bring this back, merge the two. So then that was a bit more confusing because it's like, well, how can you do branding and products? So anyway, very long story short, I was moving into an apartment with my new girlfriend, and we were looking for a sofa, and particularly a sofa bed, and I just couldn't find anything that I liked, or was prepared to spend the sort of money on that I didn't want to. I like kind of over time treating myself to nice design pieces that I'll have forever, and because that's my passion and that's what I like, and and I think it's nice to have those things because I really appreciate the designers that have created them, and it's I guess what kind of I love. But I couldn't find like the sofa bed that was like the thing that was well designed, well made, responsibly made, comfortable, looked cool, that you wanted in your living room, or you know, and that kind of felt like, you know, if Vitra
didn't fit, did it?
Yeah, I couldn't find it anyway. So I was like, oh, so this, I'm gonna try and make this, because this is my time, this is my moment. And I you know, with Ed's help, on Illustrator, you know, sort of forgotten how to use CAD by this point. I went onto Illustrator and just sort of sketched out this sofa, and being kind of, again, coming back to the sort of the Disney products, I was quite limited in terms of this less is more approach. But that's not because I'm, you know, purist about that concept. It's just like I'm not a great kind of 3D modeler, so I couldn't do it. So the only thing I do is really work with kind of 2D flat surfaces. So I thought, well, that's plywood, and I think plywood appears a lot in the design I like. So I'm going to make a plywood sofa, you know. And I got a friend of mine who his parents run a farm and they have a workshop. So I rang him up and I said, if I sent some plans and got some sheets of plywood, this is mid-pandemic, by the way, sent to you, could you cut them out? And he's like, yeah, I'll do that. And he brought them round, and I gave him a keg of beer or something for the privilege. I just screwed it together thinking, oh, this could easily fall over. The first time I've ever made it. And I found an upholsterer who we're still using, Emma, again on Facebook Marketplace. Seems to be a theme here. And you can find anything on there. Yeah. And then she made the cushions to fit, and, you know, put it together. And I was like, oh my God, this is kind of cool. I'm really happy with this. Didn't fall over. In fact, it was rock solid. And as you do, I put it up on Instagram, and people are like, oh, this is nice. Like, really into this. Got a bit of attention. And, you know, this is over a slightly longer period of time, but people were starting to go, can you make me one of those sofas? And so I did sort of 5 or 6 for friends, all the while kind of at cost, to kind of improve the design and get it to a place where I was like, oh, if I'm going to sell this, like, well, at that point I wasn't really thinking about doing it. I was just like, I quite enjoy getting into the workshop and making these things. On the side, you know, I was struggling to kind of get the freelance thing going up again. And
you were selling the prototypes, weren't you?
So, yeah, just selling the prototypes and improving the material, the production, the finish. And it wasn't probably until about sofa bed number 8 or so that I found a partner workshop manufacturer down in Cornwall that I was like, I'm confident selling these now. This is a really good product. I'm proud of. It's comfortable. It works. It's, you know, it's all flat pack, so you can get through, like, you know, different doorways and hallways and all of that. I thought, you know, I'll just have this on the side as a kind of side project thing. But I thought, I'm going to build a brand around this. The branding projects I wasn't getting at through my personal work. I thought, I'm just going to write the brief I'd love to have that was inspired by Japan, inspired by, you know, these movements, Denmark, Danish history, also the music and kind of interest have through, I guess, subcultures, and where people have done things for themselves and followed that sort of intuition. So whether that's, like, you know, the designers, or it's like how skateboarding started, you know, in LA, or artists or sculptors, or just interesting people that have kind of done things for the, you know, just followed their heart and done it. And then that's what we now look back on and think, you know, these people were so cool because they made music and they created, and I've just always been fascinated by those people. So I thought, this brand was just pulling in references from all these different places, things I liked, from album covers, record covers, to sort of Japanese construction and the Bauhaus 20th century design. Yeah. And I just thought, and it ended up, and at the time we were in the pandemic, and I think everyone, well, not everybody, of course, but there was this sense of like, life has just sort of slowed down a bit, and we've kind of got this moment to pause and reconsider, certainly for me, and I'm sure other people. So I kind of, you know, SLOWE Living came about, and I thought, well, that works quite nicely because, you know, we're all working hard, and we get this kind of, this persistence of progress all the time. And I think actually we've lost so this connection with taking time to rest and just be comfortable in ourselves and be at peace with just being still for a little while. And I know I have that issue because I'm, the irony of it is I work more now, but I'm doing something I love. But I have to remind myself, I've got a sticker on my computer that says work less. But and the whole concept just sort of started to make sense, like sofa bed, comfort, rest, take it easy, and it just sort of happened organically. It wasn't like I went and found a gap in the market or anything. And then I was like, again, I'm fast forwarding a bit, but I got to a point where it's like, I'm enjoying this more than the design, the freelance stuff. And simultaneously, I guess that workload was going down and becoming challenging to find for various reasons. But the sofa bed was like, it's when you're taking a product to market, which is a brand new thing, because I've been used to selling services as such, but not manufacturing and taking the product to market. It's a whole different kettle of fish.
Oh yeah,
I felt a little bit like this is a new ball game. So it took a bit of time to sort of really get the confidence to just lean into it full time. Visually I had the presence of the brand and the e-commerce site, but that's required me to learn a whole different discipline and practice of marketing and e-commerce and manufacturing and distribution, which has been overwhelming at times. But I feel like only recently I've got to this place where I feel like, oh wow, like if I look back at where I've come and what I've learned, I feel like, I'm at this base level now. I'm never confident, but I feel much more kind of at ease with the challenges I've got. Whereas before it's like, oh my God, this task of creating a product and bringing it to market just felt massively intimidating, and making that switch and leap into a completely different business model just took time to kind of get to and get into the mindset. And I'm now there with the support of, family and friends and my girlfriend that just saw the kind of the real unity that there was for it. So yeah, I mean,
that's great.
Yeah, without romanticizing it, it's just been kind of really, I'm absolutely love the design, like creating it and art directing and creating the content for it and just talking about it. I'm really proud of it. And
you should be,
it's just been a fun journey. Sometimes quite isolating, I'll say, with design, having your own business, whatever business you're in, and just making sure that got support and friends around me. And something I've done quite recently as well is bring all the founders I know, like product founders, together in a kind of WhatsApp group, and which is open, by the way.
Cool.
And, if you're interested and you're listening, and you want to, you've got a business that you're running that's loosely under the product category. We've got people in there that are sort of doing mindfulness workshops right up to furniture, eyewear.
Oh, that's awesome.
Clothing, and even property as well. Just a place that we can meet every week and check in, share the losses and the wins and the challenges and resources, and then a lunch every once a month or something. So I'm part of that. That's is awesome. To kind of, I'd like to grow that a bit. And that's really brought a sense of kind of community. And even though I don't hire anyone or have full staff or a team or anything, it feels as though I'm part of something with other people that are in the same boat as me, which has been massively valuable. Yeah.
It's so important. And I've got a similar setup with, a few groups actually of founders and recruiting business owners that are kind of all going through the same journey. It's like, it's interesting, isn't it? When you launch a business for the first time, regardless of what it is, you don't really realize how little you know until you're presented with it. It's like you're really good at that one thing and you become an expert, but all of a sudden you've got all these new things that you've never done before. You may have heard of them, but it's like, and it's so, I found it anyway, so frustrating because you've got to put a lot of time into it. You know that there's going to be a payoff, but all that time that you have to sink into learning something new or kind of developing.
That's correct.
Putting a website together, or like, just for me, when I was sending my first profiles out to clients, it's like, I took it for granted in my last place. I had an administrator and we had a format and something. but creating documents from scratch is like, this is how my business is going to be presented to customers, like in some way. So you spend ages agonizing over little details like that.
I know. And even though our businesses are different, with the design, we're actually very, very similar in the sense that we've both got to learn to market it. You know, you've got the podcast, which is you've got to learn how to, you know, there's another thing to market and create and run. And, you know, that's, you know, hats off to you, because it's like you kind of have to just go, okay, I'm a podcast producer now. Or okay, I'm making a phone. Like I said to you before, like if you told me I was running a sofa business 5 years ago, I would have laughed.
Yeah.
But here we are. You know, you just, and I think if you keep sort of learning new things and being curious, like good things come from that. And yeah, I'm just always interested with people, whether that do their own thing, whether it's like yourself, Chris, doing the recruitment, or the guys in this and girls in this WhatsApp group. You know, it's just
having that support.
The support is massive. Yeah.
The camaraderie and the fact that there's other people going through similar situations, and that little advice as well, kind of, that you get from those.
Yeah.
I've benefited so much from being in part of different groups, but also like it's just my character really. I just want to give back. So whenever someone asks for help, or if I spot something I think is really helpful, like a ChatGPT kind of use case for making things easier, I'm like, I just want to share that in the group. I want other people to
100%
benefit from this thing that I've found, which has saved me tons of time, because I get quite excited by that.
I know. I'm the same. I think it's sometimes there's if you've helped someone achieve something, or like you say, open their eyes to a different thing, or that you've struggled with, and then that you can share that, and that's helped them. That's almost more satisfying than sort of selling a product or getting a sale. It's more to it than just kind of doing it for a business. There's a lot more kind of fulfillment I get from, you know, creating things with people and you know, helping other younger designers to build a portfolio and see them go on and get other projects or jobs and be able to, you know, there's all sorts of things you just like.
Yeah.
There's more to it than just going to work every day, and, you know, I just see it differently, I think. And I really, as part of this WhatsApp group and also with SLOWE Living and even being on this podcast, it's like, I really do like part of this, I guess, yardstick of success for me will be, you know, if I can get someone that's not in a job they're happy with, or is got a product that they really want to take to market, but don't really know how, and feels like it's intimidating on a big mountain, to you know, to chat with them, or to, you know, help in any way, to just go like, you know, so just follow it and go for it. You know, there's no one kind of route through a career. It's you know, with the tools you've got available now, you know, setting up a podcast and hosting that online, or finding an upholsterer on Facebook Marketplace. Like it's just, all you have to do is just kind of, you can just Google it and the person's there. I mean, I'm making it sound a lot, you know.
But it's like, but where,
I think,
where would you start?
If I can help someone do that, I think that's that's the main achievement as well.
Yeah, but you say that. I mean, you know, it seems very obvious when you say it out loud, but I imagine there's a lot of people that listen to this that go, I would never have thought to look for a supplier on Facebook Marketplace, but there must be thousands of small independent businesses that do really well out of that kind of setup. So that's wonderful. And your sticker as well on your screen where it says work less. I think the joy of working on something that you love and you're passionate about and you've got a community around means that, is it really work? You know?
Well, this is No,
find something you love
about this as well, Chris. But I think if you're doing something that you love, I said to my girlfriend last night, like, I don't wake up thinking I've got to go to work. I'm excited by Mondays. You know, I think I've had a probably more stressful few years than I'm used to, both financially and because I've made this pivot into a different thing. It's been like, you know, is this really the right thing to do? That has been a little bit kind of, but only recently got to a point, ironically, where I've committed to myself and focused on it. You know, completely get this concept of focus now, whereas before it was like aimless focus in a way. It was like, if that makes any sense, but focus now has just been like, it's just completely cleared the anxiety or the kind of confusion around where I'm going, and I'm like, I'm 2 feet in, and I'm put my seatbelt on, and I'm going for it, and that's ironically is more terrifying. But you don't have time to sort of think about that, because you're like, no, I'm gonna do it, and there's various things that have signaled to me that this is worth doing, and that's why I've taken probably too long to make the decision, but it's.
But it sounds like you've got your sense of adventure back, and
well, that's a good way.
And worst case scenario, what's the worst that can happen? The business fails, but you've still got a career of freelancing to fall back on. So
exactly,
it's you've got options.
Yeah, I think it's also ironically bringing more of I would never have been invited onto a podcast, before, and now I think, I just think it's giving me more opportunity to meet more people and work with other people
massively, yeah.
Not just from the product side of things, but design and branding, and it's still very much taking on those opportunities and work to help people to communicate their brand and their products in creative ways, particularly through my expertise and skills are through like e-commerce and content, brand content. So
I love how Ollie, your career has kind of come full circle in some respects.
Yeah,
starting off in product design, then going into the branding piece, and I think actually that's probably served you really well, hasn't it? Having all that experience in branding and the marketing side. That's a really strong foundation for starting a business, because you could have the best product in the world, but if no one knows about it,
100%.
then what's the point? So combine those two, and it sounds like you're absolutely loving it. So it's great to see.
Yeah, I think it's definitely makes more sense now. Whereas earlier you're like, oh, I've got these two kind of two different things, and they're both mountains. Like, where do I go? And it takes a bit of time to kind of just realize and to get it. And you need certain signals back from clients or customers to make sure you're going in the right direction. But I think, it's just persistence, I guess. But yeah,
that's awesome.
I'm in a good place with it now.
Awesome. Right, we're going to wrap up very shortly, but I always ask everyone before we go, what are your favourite books or podcasts that you're into at the moment?
So I flick around a lot through podcasts. One that I found is super helpful, besides your own, Chris, is
very kind of you say.
One that's very. It's almost like business coaching. A guy called James Sinclair, which I just found by accident.
Yeah.
I was searching furniture designer on podcasts and on Spotify, and his podcast came up. And the concept, if people aren't aware, is he's successful sort of young entrepreneur, very different field to what I do, but just invaluable knowledge. And each episode he coaches a kind of a different business owner that's in a tricky spot or has got challenges, and he looks at how they might scale it. And it's just really interesting to listen into that kind of knowledge of somebody else.
The business broadcast.
That's right.
James Sinclair, is that the one? Yeah.
That's something I've only been listening to for a few weeks, but just kind of been sessioning, because it's just, wow, it's opened up a whole load of different things. And actually that's attributed quite a bit of like this confidence to go in and do that.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I love
generally I just love listening to other sort of designer or founder or businesses stories, particularly smaller businesses. I just think it's really interesting to hear how people start things, all different, and there's a business for anything really, and they're all different, but there's really relatable stuff. And then I'm not a huge reader, actually. I'm more of a podcast person, but it's obviously there's a book by Rick Rubin. I've actually forgotten the name of the title of the book, but I think a lot of people know it. Let's Google it. And that talks about his process of creativity. It's called The Creative Act, A Way of Being, and it's it's like short little snippets. So each chapter is probably about 4 or 5 pages max. And Rick Rubin is a record producer. He's worked for all sorts of people.
Yeah,
and It's just it just talks through his creative process, and particularly it's been helpful when you get quite blindsided and blocked by all the different things that you've got to do, and is this the right idea? And he takes on a quite very sort of spiritual, mindful approach to it, creativity, and ways that you can kind of relax into the process a bit and not take it too seriously. And I found that really insightful. And because I'm not a kind of bookworm, as it were, like 4 or 5 pages, and you can just pick that up and you can go, oh, that was really interesting. It sort of sets your way of thinking for the day. And not to mention that the artists that he's worked with is massively influential and to what I'm inspired by, music and design, and just a really interesting guy. So that's awesome. Something I've been picking up. Yeah,
I'll check that. I'll check both of those actually, because I do enjoy the business podcasts. I listen to the Alex Hormozzi's stuff that he puts out, and then there's a ton of recruitment, branding, and marketing ones that I listen to, which are quite interesting. But then, that James Sinclair one looks like right up my street, and then Rick Rubin. I mean, he's a legend in the music industry, isn't he? So that'll be quite an interesting one to get into on Audible. I think it's on there. So.
Yeah, no, definitely, and he's got a nice sort of. Some of his YouTube videos are a great way to sort of just kind of tap into that without the book, so to speak. But the book is brilliant. But just his kind of approach is really interesting for me.
Nice. Yeah, I'll get that on the listening list. So wonderful, Ollie. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Chris. Likewise. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, always. Well, I'll put links to SLOWE Living and to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. If people want to reach out and say hello, they can.
Please do, yeah.
But yeah, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Design Journeys podcast. I hope you found it insightful and inspiring. If you did, please consider sharing it with a friend or colleague who might enjoy it too. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Before I sign off, just a quick note from me. Besides hosting this podcast, I'm also the founder of Kodu, a recruitment business that specialises in physical product development. We help startups, established brands and consultancies find top-tier mechanical design and development talent, often in as little as 6 weeks. At Kodu, we're all about providing an outstanding experience, with our clients and candidates consistently rating us plus 88 on the Net Promoter Score, or NPS, which is world-class in recruitment. Oh, and I should probably mention we have a 100% fill rate too. The inspiring people I've met over the years in consumer electronics, e-bikes, medical devices and beyond have been the reason behind creating this podcast. If you'd like to know more about Kodu and how we can help your business, feel free to visit teamkodu.com or connect with me, Chris Whyte, on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.